Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. When it comes to volunteering, Vermonters are among the most generous in the country. According to federal statistics, more than 1 in 3 Vermonters volunteer at least 2 hours a week. One of the many organizations that relies on volunteers is the UVM Extension 4-H program. Here's 4-H educator Rose Garitano.
UVM Extension 4-H program is a positive youth development program. It's facilitated by volunteers, and they help youth learn transferable life skills. Volunteers help in a number of ways. Some run 4-H clubs, the traditional 4-H clubs, and project groups within those clubs, and others will just help facilitate a short-term special interest program. And in those situations, the volunteers work with youth, and the topics can range from STEM topics like robotics, exploring drones, forensics, to humanities and the arts or outdoor recreation skills. It goes well beyond the typical ag-related skills that most people think of when they think of 4-H. The volunteers will approach a 4-H educator and share what they're passionate about, and we build a program around that. It's rewarding for the volunteers. They are giving back to their community. They're building their own life skills, and they're also supported by UVM Extension staff like me in this journey.
As our regular viewers know, 4-H is full of opportunities for kids across Vermont. But 4-H also offers volunteer opportunities in an organization that prides itself on reaching young people through hands-on life skill development programs. Across the Fence spoke with some of the volunteers in the programs around the state.
What's your history with 4-H? Were you in a club as a child?
So I did not do 4-H when I was younger. I knew what it was and what it was about, but I never participated in it. My daughter actually was interested in horseback riding. So we went to a barn in Colchester and a scary farm, and that's really where, so when her trainer there was a 4-H leader and a longtime 4-H member. So we got kind of introduced to it there. She was one of the leaders of the Flying Hooves at that time, and that was primarily a horse-based project group. So that's really was my first exposure to 4-H in any sort of detail, was really with my own kids.
I was in 3 clubs when I was a young person, and so one of them was a rabbit club, one was a cooking club, and one was a crafts club.
I actually was not. I grew up in a very similar town to Burlington, which was fairly rural outside of it, but somehow didn't have any 4-H clubs. But I attended a 4-H camp about an hour away when I was 13 or 14 years old, and kind of just stayed there until halfway through college. And that was my first introduction to 4-H. Very much, you know, archery, just outdoor adventure, becoming more acquainted with nature, and just really practicing being a good citizen and being a good person within a group of people. So that is kind of the lens through which I became part of 4-H, and then have tried to stay connected with it as I've studied agriculture and been a part of Extension.
So you formed the 4-H club in the spring, and what have the kids been learning?
Well, we've covered through the summer, we did hatching of eggs and brooding and then letting the chicks grow up, and then we've been collecting.
What drew you to become a volunteer?
I had been dabbling with raising chickens, and my daughter always had friends over, so it seemed like the kids were always really interested in seeing what was going on with the chickens. So I thought, you know, at that point I thought I'd like to open this up a little bit more formally and then even make it bigger, and so that's what we did. It was in 2010.
One of the things that really did it was when we started to see some of the opportunities that 4-H provided to the kids, we were kind of like all on board on that. So both my wife and myself became leaders. You know, and really one of the reasons why we did that was with all the opportunities that 4-H offered, we wanted to make sure we allowed the kids that were in that club all the opportunity that they could to get involved in all of the different projects that they had. And both of our daughters had joined 4-H, so it was a great way to connect with our own kids, connect with the other kids, and really open it up to all of them.
What do you like about it?
For me, I think I did a lot of growing through different lenses of being part of 4-H. I know in my early teenage years, through basically the end of my teenage years, I was a part of 4-H at that Hidden Valley 4-H camp, and I just grew into my own person, I think, through those experiences, having the responsibilities, having this group that I was always coming back to, and we all had the same goals, but still had room to be creative and be ourselves was really important to that. And then now, as I'm someone who wants to be an educator and a connector, especially when it comes to food and agriculture, just taking opportunities to help kids engage in science and engage in figuring out how they can be a bigger part of their communities.
It's a lot of fun for the leaders as well, and a big learning experience for us too. I mean, I've learned a ton of stuff about horses, poultry, archery. You know, I've met dozens of great community members, and just getting involved with different fundraising activities. Our club does a lot of work with the American Cancer Society. You know, one of our big events we do every year is the Horses for Hope, where and it's grown to hundreds of people come to the barn and look at the horses that are dressed up in costume, and they do pony rides and stuff like that, and we raise a lot of money. But also just we go and play games with people at assisted living homes and do some dinners and cooking with them and that sort of thing.
Which are the longest?
Well, it's very fun. We have a very good time, and I like to be an adult in these kids' lives that's not, you know, necessarily a parent-child dynamic. I'm kind of like another adult in their life, and it's really nice to give people a venue to get their hands dirty and to learn by doing. And I know that for me, that's the best way to learn, and I really enjoy supporting other people having opportunities to learn by doing.
And again, greenish blue feet.
Oh, let's see his greenish.
Tell me about your club now. What do you guys do?
It started out really as primarily a horse and equine based club. And they did do a few other projects before, but you know, once we got involved and saw the other opportunities that there were out there, like now our club does everything from equine, poultry, archery, cooking, and community service, which is probably one of the ones our club is the most proud of.
Our curriculum has been poultry for the most part. That's the common theme throughout all the years. And each year we also do additional projects. So the poultry piece, we've done iterations of incubating, embryology. We raise meat birds, we've raised show birds, we've gone to poultry shows, and just had a lot of fun curating a number of different types of breeds of chickens that lay different color eggs and caring for the chickens. So that's that part of it, but I've also had subgroups in the overarching club. So we've had a construction subgroup. This year we have welding and fiber and spinning, and we've done an international cuisine subgroup. Last year we had mentors, and the elders in the club took the littles under their wing and really did some nice leadership development.
It was an after-school program, so upper to middle elementary school students would meet with me once a week, and I chose food, shockingly, as a topic to cover, and we talked about food from the lenses of plants to different types of food, to where our food comes from. They got to make ice cream one week, they got to make little pizzas one week, so just trying to connect kids with food and give them a better idea of when they eat something or where they see a plant, what goes into growing that plant and getting the food that they eat.
What would you say to somebody to encourage them to become a 4-H volunteer?
Well, first of all, they ask themselves if they're passionate about a particular field. And in my case, agriculture was the big thing, but also I come from a family of heavy agriculture people and heavier craftsmanship people. So I've had that influence on both sides, and it's nice to be able to work with your hands and make something new or better. That's the motto, is make the best better. So I think if a person's passionate about those things, then and they want to share it with younger people, then becoming a 4-H leader is a great way to contribute to their community and also grow really competent young people into adults, and also grow those young adults' confidence in themselves and their own skills.
You ready? Go get it.
I would say that it's really probably one of the best ways you can use your time. You know, the way I kind of look at it is you kind of plant these little seeds of opportunity in all these kids, and you just step back and they just take off. It's so exciting to see the kids grow in that way. And really, you can put as much into it as you have available. So if you're a person who has just a little bit of time, or maybe has some, you know, experience with certain topics, like if you're a baker or you work in you do archery or something like that, you can work just for a limited amount of time on certain projects with the clubs. Or if you have a lot of other resources and time, you can spend, you know, a lot more time on it. And, you know, I think the leaders and the kids appreciate both sides of that, you know, so whether you're spending a lot of time or a little time. So it really gives you the flexibility on that side too.
I mean, I guess I would just ask them how important community is to them and being a part of that community. I think that any age of kid in the community is going to be the future of that community. And so whatever it is that you love doing, there's a way to share that with kids, and that 4-H is a great way to share that with kids.
There are a wide variety of volunteer opportunities statewide in the 4-H program. For more information, call the toll-free number on your screen, 1-800-571-0668. That's 800-571-0668. Or check the Extension 4-H website. Last month on the program, we visited the Fleming Museum at UVM, and we focused on a current exhibition featuring Vermont cartoonist laureate Alison Bechdel. As we close today's program, we look back at a previous exhibit at the museum. In this story, Rebecca Gollin explores an artist's experience as a Holocaust survivor.
Samuel Bach's first art show took place when he was 9 years old and living with his family in a ghetto in Poland. 75 years later, his most recent show is on display at the University of Vermont's Fleming Museum.
We wanted to collaborate with the Holocaust Study Center here at UVM and asked if there were particular artists they'd be interested in showing here, and Samuel Bach was the name that came up right away.
Born in Vilna, Poland in 1933, Bach and his family were confined to a ghetto and later sent to a labor camp. Only he and his mother survived, spending the next several years in displaced persons camps. Bach was painting all the while.
You'll see a few sort of shifts over time in the show, which is roughly, although not exactly chronological, but you'll see from his early watercolors and paintings, very kind of expressionistic, almost abstract in places, and then he evolves into the style he uses mostly throughout his career, which is what he depicts is surrealistic, but the manner in which he's depicting it is very realistic. This is very finely painted, very detailed, almost in the style of a Renaissance painting.
The show is entitled Survival and Memory, and the work encompasses a broad time frame, including paintings from those very early years to the present. The paintings explore and communicate Bach's experience as a Holocaust survivor, while expressing universal truths about human frailty.
What you'll see in the exhibition is not very explicit images of what happened in the Holocaust. It's really the artist processing not just the Holocaust, but the questions that such an event raises about humanity in general. Human nature, the nature of history, the nature of how we treat each other.
Certain images appear over and over, particularly Jewish letters and iconography. Other frequent themes include decaying landscapes and rotting fruit, especially pears, which represent humans in many of his paintings. Bach also appropriates familiar images into his work, including well-known paintings and photographs.
This is a great example of how layered and complex some of Samuel Bach's paintings can be. This is from a series called Landscapes of the Jewish Experience. And he's using Jewish symbols in a particular way. In this one, you see the shapes of the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. And you also see it's broken up into 4 different chambers. And this refers to a Jewish theological concept called Pardes of the different levels of understanding of Scripture. It reads from right to left the way you would read Hebrew, and goes from sort of the simplest, most straightforward understanding, reading of a text, to the most complex and esoteric. And you see that the chambers get increasingly more difficult to access.
Bach's recent work incorporates a more colorful palette, giving a touch of lightness to the serious themes of humanity he's still exploring in his 80s.
Certainly some of that is a little heavy, but then other parts of it aren't, and you'll see that with one of the most recent paintings in the show, where he's taken to using the letters of the word hope in the landscape. And so there is always that flip side of the darkness is the light.
Bringing hope to the landscape while exploring the darker sides of humanity. Samuel Bach is an artist with a lot more to say. At the Fleming Museum, I'm Rebecca Gullen with Across the Fence.
For information on current exhibitions at the Fleming, check the museum's website, flemingmuseum.org. That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.